Today, folks, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're going to change the oil seal for the tach drive on the Honda CB750K that I've been working on all winter. This is one of the very last things that I need to do, and when I buttoned up the motor and was tying up some loose ends the other day, I noticed that I had an oil leak when it was on a side stand after I'd run the engine for a few minutes and had gotten good and warm. In fact, I had actually ridden the bike, and it took me a few minutes to track it back all the way up to this port here. There's an oil seal down in here that the tach cable goes down into, like this, and it was weeping oil quite significantly around this seal here. So today I'm going to show how to change this seal. The reason I'm focusing on this seal today, this change, it's not really your typical oil seal change because it's recessed deep down inside of this well in the head of the engine or the valve cover, and it's not easy to get at. So we're going to talk about a couple different ways of doing that, and then I'm actually going to change the seal, and you can see how I'm going to go about it. Here's a more typical application for an oil seal. This happens to be the left side shifter for the CB750, and you can see the oil seal here, this black ring, which I had already replaced some time ago because this was leaking as well. But this is a more typical application because the oil seal is really flush with the outside of the case, so it's very easy to get in and leverage it out and put a new one in because you can get at it easily. The problem with the other one, the tach cable, is that it's recessed down in the well, and it's going to require a little bit of finessing to get it out. Here's the new replacement seal. Not very big, as you can see. It's a very simple little seal. This is an OEM Honda part, and you can see the part number right there. Still serviced by Honda, so you can order them new, as I did this one. It's quite inexpensive. I think it was $4 or $5, something like that, delivered. But still available from Honda, and I think they probably use this on a lot of other applications besides the oil seal for the tach cable. There's at least 2 ways, probably more, to get this seal, the original seal, out of that deep well in the cylinder head. One common way would be to take a long, thin wood screw, like you see here, drive it into the edge of the seal, and tighten it down with a screwdriver. And then from there, there's 2 different ways you can leverage it out. You can either continue to turn the screw in until it bottoms against the metal of the head, which will then tend to pull this out as you turn the screw in, or to grab a hold of the screw after you've got it in with a pair of needle nose pliers or something like that and gently work it out. You could also pre-drill a starter hole if it was done carefully. You have to be very careful about that, and pre-drilling a starter hole to get the screw started. That's one way. The other way would be take a dental pick, and you can see here I've got an assortment of dental picks. You can get these at swap meets, these tool shows that you see roaming the country, and they set up under the tents quite often have these. These are used, obviously. These aren't new tools. And they usually have them bundled up for, I don't know what I paid for these, $4 or $5 probably. It's been a while, but they essentially become disposable because they're readily available. And if you do bend one or break one, you toss it, and next time you're around a flea market, swap meet, or tool show, you can pick them up. I keep them around. I use them all the time. These are high quality stainless steel, surgical stainless steel. Very well made, and they're perfect for something like this. I think what I'm going to try first is one of the dental picks. I haven't decided which one of these I'm going to use, but I think I'm going to try that approach before I use the screw. Here's an up-close shot of the well in the valve cover of the Honda, and way down in the bottom you can see the black seal that I've got to get out of there so that I can replace it with a new one. You'll also see the drive pin, this metal piece of metal in the middle, is driven by a gear. It sits like this from the cam, the valve train. that gear turns that tab. That tab engages in a slot in the end of the cable, which drives your tachometer via a shaft up to the tach. So the seal that's leaking just prevents the oil from escaping from underneath the cover, and that's obviously the problem that we have. The pick I've chosen to use for this is shaped like this. I have 2 or 3 different styles, and I might have to experiment a little bit to see which one works best. This is going to be a difficult operation to get a good shot of without blocking the camera, so I'm going to do my best here to show you how I'm going to leverage this out. There we go. You can see I got it hooked, and there's the seal. Obviously, I'm not worried about damaging this seal because it's going to be replaced anyway. And it's just a friction fit down in the well. There's really nothing holding it. There's an up-close look at the inside of the well. You can see the oil that I'll clean out before I put the new seal in. And you can see the metal drive pin that's driven from a cam on a gear inside the valve cover. It came out fairly well, about as I expected. Here's the seal side by side, the original, the one I just removed, and then the new replacement one. It's always a good idea just to verify that you in fact do have the right seal, dimensionally and size, those kind of things. And it is the right seal, it matches perfectly. So here we're going to install the new seal, the replacement seal, in the tunnel. Typically I take the new seal and put a very thin film of grease. Very thin, don't overdo it, you don't need to glop it on, just to ease the transition into the position. Some people will slather silicone as an adhesive and as a sealant on the outside of the seal. I don't generally prefer to do that. If the position of the seal, if the fitment of the seal is such that I believe it's been compromised, I might consider using silicone, but as a matter of course, unless I have reason to believe I'm going to have difficulty getting the seal to seat and seal properly, I don't use silicone. As I've said before in previous videos, I've seen it overused. It's not a cure-all for everything. It's absolutely fine, perfectly fine, and appropriate application, but just to slather it on for really no reason, I think, is counterproductive. So there is no silicone been applied to this seal. I don't believe it's necessary. I have here a socket with a little extension. This happens to be 1/4 inch. It doesn't make any difference as long as the socket is just slightly smaller in diameter than the seal, because I'm going to use this to push the seal down into position. I think this happens to be a 9mm socket. But you size it to the seal, and it's very straightforward. Again, there's a little bit of grease on the outside of the seal. I started in a position like that. Then I simply take the socket centered on the seal and push it down into position. Might have to take my hand and do a little forcing like that. It should slide into position. You might notice a little friction, but it generally will slide into place. You can take a soft mallet and tap it gently. On this one, it's not going to be necessary. And that's basically it. Now the seal's been seated down inside of the tunnel. At this point, the only thing left to do is to reattach the tach cable, the drive cable. There's the end of the drive that slips down over the slot in the drive pin. And make sure everything's aligned, and we'll button it up. The set screw, which goes through this hole here, as I showed a moment ago, is in pretty bad shape. That's a 5mm, and I do have 5mm JIS, or Japanese Industrial Standard screws, both used from other projects and new. I just don't happen to have one this length. So what I did find is a metric 5mm. It's the same length as the original but the head, as you can see here, is bigger. It's a European standard head, not the JIS style or size, as you can see here, which is smaller. This will work fine, it's just the head is not the exact proportions that you would typically see in a JIS type fastener. And sometime perhaps I'll do a little dissertation on the difference between JIS or Japanese industrial standard fasteners and the slots and the standard metric. And I would bet that there's people out there that aren't even aware that the Japanese have a different driver bit standard than the rest of the world. That's the JIS standard. The threads are the same now. They changed them a number of years ago. When they used to have their own standard even for some of the threads, but the heads now are still different. So what I'm going to do next is just put a little bit of anti-seize on there. You don't have to overdo it, just a little bit. Push that in all the way, get that screw started, and just tighten it up. And there we go. Next thing is to test it, see if we still have an oil leak.